You notice how there's no grass here anymore? That's because I dug it all out.
Hi everyone, it's Daryl from Yard Farmer, and this is part 2 of our 4-part video series on how to design a sustainable park strip. So if your park strip right now is just all grass, and especially if you live in the Western United States where water conservation is a concern, this video series is going to be for you. So if you haven't checked out video 1 yet, go ahead and hit up that video first. That's going to cover general research that you need to do before you get started and give you an overview of the whole process. This video, video 2, is about physical site prep, digging out the soil, adding compost, adding mulch, getting irrigation ready, and so on. I hope you enjoy.
When you are ready to start the actual hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears of your park strip conversion, we need to think about how we're getting the grass out. Because I'm assuming what you currently have in your park strip is good old Kentucky bluegrass that you're currently just mowing back and forth and watering with pop-up sprinklers that are super inefficient. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe you've got a bunch of gravel. Either way, digging it out is going to be annoying. So we're going to talk about the best strategies for removing the grass here. With conversion from any sort of sod to a native landscape, there's a number of things you can do, including sheet mulching, where you actually just lay cardboard on top and add soil and mulch and then plant into that. However, with a park strip, we've got concrete here. We've got concrete here. This is a pretty skinny park strip, I'm not gonna lie. This is only like 2 feet wide. Mounding up like that is gonna make a mess. One of my biggest landscaping pet peeves is actually just wood chips spilling over onto the sidewalk. And so for a park strip of this width, digging down kind of ubiquitously across the entire thing is really the only way to guarantee that when I add some compost and a little bit of wood mulch for moisture retention, that wood mulch is gonna hit right here, and the concrete itself is going to serve as a landscape edge and a nice crisp clean line along the sidewalk. Same with this curbing over here. So honestly, this is about 2 inches down because frankly I ran out of steam, but 3 inches would be better. If I could do 1 inch of compost to soften up the soil and add some nutrients, and then 2 inches of wood mulch and still not hit this line, that would be the ideal situation. Now, if you happen to have one of those park strips that's 8 feet wide, you could just dig 1 or 2 feet from each of those concrete lines, dig that down 4 inches, let it mound up towards the center. That's fine. But as you can see, I don't have that luxury. So it all needs to get dug out. There's a number of ways you can dig that out, but if you have sensitive utilities like Google Fiber, if you have trees with roots, especially young trees, you've got to be careful around those areas and dig out by hand. And honestly, this is so narrow that using a skid steer or bringing in an excavator might not be worth it. So really, in a lot of cases, the park strip is a blood, sweat, and tears kind of job, and you just need to get a shovel in the soil and start scooping that sod out. Depending on the size of your park strip, you might also want to arrange for some kind of dumping or hauling or removal. If you got a pickup truck with a tarp in it, that'll work great, but if you don't, you might want to order a dumpster and have it on site. Displacing sod creates a shocking amount of biomass, and I'm sure we can cut to some footage of me sitting on a big old pile of displaced sod to prove, yes, Lisa, yes.
So clearly this is a significant amount of sod, and it would be sort of a bummer to have it hauled off to the landfill. So if you have the capability, you can actually compost this by adding a bunch of leaf mulch, the winter clippings from any of your dormant perennial shrubs from this year. You could order a chip drop and put down wood chips from that and mix that. That carbon to nitrogen ratio would convert this to amazing garden soil that you could put throughout your entire yard in about a season or maybe a year.
There's nothing worse than thinking you're done with a project and then looking at this giant pile of sod and dirt that you've created and having no plan for how to remove it. I wish I had an easier answer for you, but really just getting it dug out so that you have this nice clean line is the way to go. Honestly, one of the biggest design constraints, and remember, I'm defining design constraint as something that is fixed, that we are designing around, we are working backwards from. One of the most primary design constraints is budget. And so I would much rather you set your budget and work backwards from that than just hope you can afford it and make the decisions in a laissez-faire sort of manner. For this specifically, I'm going to get about $350 from the city rebated back to me for flipping this much square footage of park strip. That's all very exciting. But I also have to take note of the tubing, irrigation costs, excavation costs if I'm hiring out help, compost and soil costs, if I'm putting any stepping stones or flagstone for people to cross the park strip, and of course plants. So honestly, doing this on a shoestring, I could probably come up with something pretty decent for $300-400, which I will get rebated back to me and break even. But overall, I'm probably gonna spend something like $850-900 to get really to this dream mini meadow that I wanna get to. Even for a park strip project, which seems like a pretty small endeavor, you still are gonna want to flag for utilities. Super easy to do that. You'll just call 811, which is the national sort of hotline for utilities flagging. You can also, if you just Google 811 or know before you dig, you'll get brought to a website. If you put your city or county in front of the search terms, you'll likely get brought to a page where you can fill out an online request if you don't feel like talking to anybody. Regardless, they'll say that they'll come and flag all of your utility lines that cross through your project, be it gas, water, power, Google Fiber, anything like that. But just so you know, it took us 7 days to get them to come out and flag gas. So do this more than a week ahead of when you plan to do work. They can fine you if they show up and you've already started work and they haven't flagged yet. So really it's on you to just make sure you're flagging ahead of time. With identifying design constraints, it's all about figuring out what you need to design around or at least be careful about. Gas lines are typically, I don't want you to take my word for it, buried at least 2 feet deep. So it's unlikely you're going to hit a gas line. However, if your Google Fiber is crossing through a park strip, you're gonna hit it. They bury it 3 inches deep. They know what they did though. You'll just call them and they'll fix it the next day. They know that they should have dug that deeper than they did. For things like this gas line, the main reason I wanna know it's here is I cannot put a tree here. In fact, I don't want the canopy of a tree to even cross this because typically the strongest roots of a tree are about the diameter of a tree's canopy. So I got a little cherry tree over there. I got a little cherry tree over there. And those canopies are more than safe, where the roots of those trees are not going to affect this gas line. While we're on the subject of design constraints, one of the things you're really going to want to pay attention to is where your existing irrigation is, or if you're going to need to bring in irrigation from elsewhere in your yard. Maybe you don't need to irrigate your park strip at all. It depends very much on your climate and your plan for establishing your plants. Now, this park strip in particular had existing sprinkler heads from when there was lawn. That was here when I got here. And so where you see these pink flags were the old sprinkler heads that we've actually just capped. They're going to just exist. They're just going to fossilize under there, and maybe in 1,000 years some archaeologist will dig it up and be like, I wonder what the humans used this PVC for. We teed off of that existing sprinkler line that was running here just to tie drip irrigation in, and then we've got just 1/2-inch tubing running the entire length of the park strip. And once I plant the plants, I'll actually plug in just some 1/4-inch tubing to kind of zigzag through these plants. This is really only to get my plants established. My goal is to use drought-tolerant native plants that after year 2, year 3 are really well adapted to Utah's climate. I'm hoping maybe I'll flip the drip on in July, August, September a little bit to supplement if we have a really hot, dry year. But I'm not trying to use this much outside of establishment purposes. However, I think it is really good to plan for establishment even with more official infrastructure like this. For example, I have severe ADHD, and if I don't make a plan to automate establishment, these plans ain't getting established. So, know your weaknesses and give yourself that support if needed.
This concludes video 2 in our How to Design a Sustainable Park Strip series. Video 3 is going to be covering native plants and which ones to select based on your unique ecoregion. I'll see you then. Bye.